So today's guest is one of my super longtime friends. We go way back, and one thing he had said to me last week on a phone call that stood out is, if you're working out every day, stop it. So I'm really excited about what we're going to dive into here. A lot of body movement, a lot of things you might be doing in your workouts that are actually hindering you achieving your goals. And there's no better person to hear from than Doug. Welcome to the Crystal Zen podcast. I believe our bodies are a living map of the entire universe. All the answers reside within. Remember, you are sovereign, whole, and infinitely valuable. And the best gift we can give to the world is our own healing. Join me as we explore holistic tools, spiritual practices, and paradigms that are shifting the way people experience life, business, and relationships. I love to share education on the most recent medical research and cutting-edge technology on anatomy, neurology, trauma, development, and more to give us a foundation in understanding how to align, utilize, and upregulate our physical systems. Ultimately, this podcast is a witness and support to people on their journey of remembering, an inspiration for all of us to keep going, and a reminder that we are not alone. Welcome to the Crystal Zen podcast. If you've been here before, you know the first thing we do is tune in, which gives us all a beautiful opportunity to just come back into the present moment and make sure the right things are said that are in service to our listeners and ourselves today. And also it provides really expansive understanding and conversation. So if you're in a place where it's safe to do so, and Doug will join us, we'll just close our eyes. Notice your breath. Find the parts of your body that are pressing into any surface beneath you, your feet, your glutes, your back. And let go of any pre-planned expectations or things that are going to happen in the future. Feel a deep sense of trust that will come back to you when it's needed. Find two places in your body you're feeling a little bit of tension. And then as you breathe, soften there, adding any visualizations that are helpful, like a waterfall or ice melting. As long as it takes. If you're having a particularly busy or stressful day, you're welcome to pause here, breathe into a couple other places of your body and melt that tension, and then hit play when you're ready. So go ahead and take a final breath in through your nose, out through your mouth, and come back. Okay, we're here.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, we forget what we're going to talk about?
No, not at all. I love it. No, it's great. It is funny how sometimes you just need that second to again find yourself a little bit of calm, and
yeah,
it's weird how that's how you feel like you're human again sometimes, right? everything's gonna be okay.
That is true. I need that every 30 seconds in my life. So I do want you guys to know what Doug does, so you know where a lot of this information is coming from. So basically the biggest all-encompassing umbrella is HTK movement, right?
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you'll rattle off your certifications and qualifications for us.
Yeah, sure. So it started off with the NASM certification, and then it kind of worked its way into, I also got a nutrition degree there, through NASM as well. Then I got a couple FRC, FRA, some functional range conditioning. Recently I've really been doing some of that stuff. I also a while ago got an AFAA group training, and then I've just done a little bit of everything. So
I love it.
I've dabbled a lot, and I'm finally figuring out kind of my little niche, kind of how to make it my own, right? Absorbing a lot, like we talked about even just before we sat down. That awesome quote by Bruce Lee of absorb a lot, let go of what's not serving me. They're basically casting out those things that aren't serving me, and then again just making the things personal that I want to make personal, right? And I think that's what authentication is, and authentication. Holy cow! Yeah, just being authentic.
Yeah.
I
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you pulled out that quote, and then I loved it so much I wanted to repeat it.
Yeah.
It said,
you know better than me, there you go.
well, I tried to memorize it when you told it to
good.
me, which was, keep the things that are useful.
Yeah. Absorb what is useful.
Absorb what is useful.
Yeah.
Discard what is not
Discard
useful.
what is useless. Add what is like individualized or what is you. I forgot the last part, but those first two are what they are. So
yeah, those three steps. We got it. You guys got the message. I hope you wrote that down.
Weird, an Asian telling you Bruce Lee. But it's crazy how I love a lot of his thoughts and what he has to say. So it's pretty, he was a wise guy. So.
Yeah, he was. So with all of that, maybe we should back up just a little bit to the beginning.
Yeah.
The beginning, when we were working at 15 years ago.
Yeah.
That MMA gym.
Yeah.
That's kind of where it started.
At the pit, yeah.
And I want to hear your perspective on the evolution of fitness, because I think a lot of my listeners are very much into practices, fitness, yoga, things like that. And this might be really interesting to start to deconstruct and understand why we've been participating the way we have in fitness, right? And like how that sort of evolved, because you've just like kept your tab on that world right on through, right?
For sure, yeah. So it's so funny how things have evolved. Like I started off with 4-pillar and a lot of barbell, a lot of weightlifting. I've also done jiu-jitsu and grappling, and I played baseball growing up, played basketball, football. So it's so funny how people think of like working out and exercise, and then they immediately jump to either CrossFit or Orange Theory or running, or it's such a small scope. So people think like, they then jump to one of those and like, well, I don't like this. And I'm like, well, the cool thing about fitness and about being active is watch your kids and what they do. And that is fitness. Like all of that encompasses it for me. That's exercise. So for us to like start putting on labels of like these 5 movements or what the body's supposed to be able to do, I think it's a great foundation, but there's a lot more to it than that as well too. So I think a lot of people just don't know where to start. And then when I look at it like, well, are you overweight? Are you like undernourished or like too thin? Like what? Like so, I think there's a lot of different things that can kind of like depending on where you start, really can affect where you want to like what you want to do essentially.
I think that was the most important question when you said, and I have participated in a lot of those things and was a personal trainer, and that's the first thing you ask is, what are your goals, right?
Yeah,
but when we're just here without a trainer like you, and we're like watching all of this noise in media about getting in shape, do we really stop and ask ourselves that question? Well,
again, it's like, what do you want to do? The first thing I ask anybody that comes in and works with me is, again, what are your goals? Not what are my goals? And then it's so funny how so many of them are like, I don't know.
Right.
And it's like, that's a really good question. I'm like, well, are you in pain? Are you trying to lose weight? Are you trying to get stronger? Like, and it's, well, yeah, you want to say, like, whatever it may be, but it's kind of like, do you want to be able to wrestle with your kids and not be sore the next day? Like, that's where, like, me having kids, like, really changed my outlook on what getting old, growing up, fitness really is. Like, my 6-year-old wants to jump on a tramp and backflip and flip, and he does crazy stuff now, and he's like, Dad, can you do this? And I'm like, man, not so much. And I just realized that if I can't do certain things, I lose how I can speak to him about those things. And so for me, I've done a lot of like, I've learned how to backflip, front flip, aerial, roll. Like I've gotten a lot more comfortable, and I've had to really change my body, because if I would have done those things 2, 3, 4 years ago, right off CrossFit, I could have really hurt myself. As strong and well I moved, I was really strong and moved really well for CrossFit.
Yeah.
I didn't move really well for like moving in the air or jumping or landing, and like spatial awareness. I didn't realize how horrible my spatial awareness was. Like, I couldn't look for and how, like, you start to watch kids and they find the ground. This is why I think adults can't ride roller coasters. The spatial awareness is horrible. When's the last time somebody did this and tried to find behind them, or even behind, right? Like, when did we look out of our real peripherals? Everyone has blinders, right? Because what do I look at?
Or
screen.
Our cars have rear view cams.
Yeah, and we don't even have to turn anymore. So again, everyone's stuck in this world, whereas this is the world we live in. Not just this. What's this? This is a squat, up and down. This is a jump.
Yeah.
My basketball athletes, those kids have to jump. They have to catch balls here. They then have to transfer it to a plant then finish. I don't think people that, again, that haven't done it in a long time, they don't realize what they're really doing.
That's incredible. And I know it kind of blew my mind in one of our other conversations when I had said, even though I felt like I was proficient operator and teacher in this world for a decade, I had spent a lot of those years injured, and took me like digging myself out of those holes to realize that my hobbies and what I was participating in, specifically horse riding, I wasn't training for that entire time. And then you were telling me
I've worked with a couple people that have horse again, they all have one, like they usually have like an adductor that's way stronger than the other because of the squeeze, like you're squeezing and turning, and it's funny how you have such a dominant side. And that's what I do when I do assessments, is I like try to see if there's a big difference a lot of times, because again, everyone wants it to be like this. There's no such thing as perfect. There's no 50-50 equal. That's like, again, we're not supposed to. That's not who we are. But again, I can start to look at, wow, that's a big discrepancy between your flexibility, your mobility. Your right side has way more degrees of external rotation and flexion than your left one does. So if you're stuck there sleeping or sitting all day, like I watch people's patterns of how they sit. Like if you're stuck like this all day, like most people hurt themselves sitting, sleeping, not moving. Where, like, again, they'll wake up the next day and, like, did you have a kink in your neck? It's because you don't move enough. You have a pattern that now you're stuck in your bed that's either too soft, too hard. So then that's just a whole nother can of worms you can go into.
Well, and I'm glad you brought it up, because that list is the perfect thing to kind of illustrate some of the differences between what you're doing and what kind of we were raised on working out, which is looking at body patterns all day long, and then training for purpose and ability, and then knowing that that keeps evolving. Like, I just kind of want to pause, and especially if you're listening to this, does that any of that apply to you? And like, what would you want to know? Like, what would change if you were like, holy cow, I don't even know, is my mommy's Pilates class every Monday, Wednesday, Friday helping me like do the things I need to sit in carpool all day? So
one thing I get with Pilates, like, I like it. I think we just become so obsessed with one thing that it ends up hurting us in the long run. Like a posterior tilt, I think people are afraid to train an anterior tilt. Why are we stuck in posterior? How many people are stuck posteriorly all day? So now, like, they don't understand the difference between their pelvis and their lower back. So now you're telling post tilt, that's a bad cue in my opinion. It's very, very vague. And again, understanding that person's hip and what it can and can't do, then like, I understand they're trying to be the most safe, and that's where group classes are tough, and I don't love big group classes because again, so much of that detail gets lost in the mix. How much I touch a hip bone and say, hey, this is your posterior, this is your PSIS, this is your ASIS, and they're like, what? Because I'm like, I'll say grab your hips, and people grab their rib cage, they grab their butt, they grab their, and I'm like, no, your hip bones, like the PSIS and ASIS, and now that's how I cue the people I work with now. Grab your hip bone, do an anterior tilt, now go posterior. Is there a pinch? If the answer is yes, shift to where there's not a pinch or squeeze a little less. And then learn to move without a lot of those pinches. Too many of us, we squeeze too hard. But again, can your muscles squeeze? Can it relax? That's a healthy muscle. Then can you do it at high operating speeds? That's what athleticism is. And then mixing athletic, well, that's again what speed can then come from. And then athleticism, the combo of that, and then hand-eye coordination, and then peripherals, and then again your awareness in space. Like that's where, and so someone at 40 is like, I'm gonna go play pickleball. I'm like, there's way more to it than just. And then they're like, well, then I have an Achilles injury or I have a back injury. And I'm like, well, yeah, duh. Like, you're not, like, your ankles don't even flex and extend and your toes haven't moved in 15 years. Like, well, duh. Like, I can tell you why. I think that's like the leading injury in fitness in the last 3 years is pickleball injuries. And again, it just goes to whatever the new trend is, right? You watch, and again, if you play with somebody who's better than you, who's faster than you, guess what? They're speeding you up, and you don't have, like, and if you're competitive, all you're doing is reacting, and if someone reacts, oh, there, I tweaked my back. Because again, how many times did you bend and you're like, I can't tell you how many times someone said, my dog yanked me, and I was like, your dog yanked you and you hurt your back? Like, it is shocking how often I bent over, rotated, went to pick something up, and I threw my back out. It's just the straw that broke the camel's back. That's all it is. I know, I feel like preach. I sent the funniest meme to my husband this morning of Arnold Schwarzenegger going, oh, you don't have time to work out? I feel so bad for you, baby. but that's where you don't need body. It's so funny how you don't need as much time as you think. That's why I hate this whole you have to do an hour. Okay. Why? So why? I want to touch on that, but I wonder if you would. Let's go there right after this. Whenever you want. But will you share with us your theory and pelvic alignment first, just so that people can maybe start thinking about
when they're in these Pilates classes or pump classes and they are getting cued extreme positions for their pelvis, to keep the group safe, what do they maybe need to be thinking about for themselves, even in yoga?
I like to think, like, even just the way, like, when you centered us and you, like, pull us together, like, do you feel the feet on the ground? Do you feel I always say, are you athletic? If you are in an athletic position, if a car was coming towards you, could you move? If a tiger was running after you and was very hungry, could you move? If the answer is no, I have to do this to then move, you're in a passive position. And if you're just trying to work in a passive position, you're probably forcing. And the problem with a lot of these other like modalities that I found is they've been built for people that are 5'5" to maybe 6 foot with a certain torso length, with a certain femur length. So if you fall out of those categories, that's where, again, maybe that machine isn't for you and it's not for everybody. So that's why so much of what I do is so individualized, and so much of it's, hey, you need this block here, you need this block there, you need this to do this. And then it's like, okay, and then when I see it, I'm like, okay, that's stacked. Now do you feel this, this, this? So there is definitely a lot more to it, but I like to be able to, again, put your hands on your hips and then start to, again, so I use the pelvic floor a lot.
Yeah.
There's a couple different cues I use. The best, like for females.
As a yoga teacher, the more pelvic floor cues, the better.
So I'll give you 3, I think is what we'll go with. The first one that I ever heard for female, and I heard this from a pelvic floor specialist, is for females, you want to pretend you almost have like a blueberry. Insert the blueberry into the tip, you're sucking it into the belly button, you're pushing it back out from the belly button to the pelvis. That's why you can segment all through pelvis, lumbar spine, lower abdominals, everything that's working on there. So it's inhale, push it out, exhale, pull the blueberry in, exhale, push it out. So that's one. Or the other thing, when people are starting to lift, I say it's like you had to pee really bad, hold your pee in. My favorite one for boys, this one, like it gets parents all the time. I always say, as a girl, you'll probably never understand, but I always say as a boy, I'm like, take the tip of your penis and try to suck it in itself. And guys like, that's so funny. And I'm just like, try it. And they're like, whoa, I'm glued to the ground now. And I'm like, wow. Like, it's crazy how when I tell people, when they learn that cue, pull it in, pull the center. So pull your chi in, suck your chi in. That's what they do in Qigong. I don't care what it's called. For me though, like pull your chi in, and Americans like pull your chi in. It's so far disconnected. Whereas a 14-year-old basketball, I say, hey, pull your penis inside of itself. And they're like, oh, I got it. And then like, they jump 3 inches higher and you're like, or they throw a few miles an hour faster and they're like, what just happened? And it was like, you're learning how to use your chi, which I feel like, again, so much of it's in the lower, like, again, their end ranges. End range. The pelvis is the end range. It's the center. It's the core. But then you have fingers that are end range, toes that are end range, ankles and wrists are all under trained. Everyone wants the big, sexy muscles without training the small, not so sexy muscles.
Yeah, I would have never thought of my fingers as sexy. I want those to have a little six-pack on my finger.
No, but even one grip, like I'm telling you right now, a man, when you shake someone's hand, there's nothing more like intimidating than a big dude that has a grip. Because I'm telling you right now, that guy could just hold you and squeeze you, and it's like, one time a long time ago, we went to this little snake place, and I held a snake, and I was like, the squeeze was fascinating to me. So I teach the squeeze a lot, but learning it 10%, 20%, 30%. But again, it's where am I squeezing? But again, if I'm using one joint, I want to squeeze all the other joints to use the wrist. If I'm using like my elbow and my wrist, I'm squeezing into my shoulders to use my elbows and my wrist. If I'm wanting to use the full chain, I'm now squeezing my abs in this leg to then rotate and move just the shoulder joint. So start to articulate it, start to get into, again, some little bit of rabbit holes, but it's where is the squeeze and can my mind connect to that?
Yeah, and all of that, I think, is the magic in it. It is the point, because we're starting to learn about our fascial chains. It's becoming more popular knowledge and people understanding. And we're starting to learn like how efficient those things can be and how fascinating they are, and how actually that's where we're getting the muscle transference. I was going to say first, I wonder if I could get away with those cues in my yoga class, because I have a couple different ones and it's so hard to describe. But,
for boys, yes, you just have to soften them up a little bit. As long as you warn them. What I've really learned is say, hey, do you understand? I would ask them, do you understand this? And most of them are going to be like, kind of. That's literally, they're going to be like, sure. And I'm like, do you understand your pelvic floor?
Yeah.
And like, so if you like, I know I've kind of built this thing where I'm like, hey, I might, like, depending on the age or again, you have to talk to your audience, and that's,
well, it is.
I've really learned that.
It's the core movement in yoga too. It's
Dude,
the lot
pull the center.
that you're supposed
But pull the
to
center
have.
isn't like, it's so like, what's center?
Yeah.
Right? Define center. And to a boy, once you define, it's descriptive. That's why we get in fights. We're not descriptive enough. Communication is everything. If you're not descriptive enough, like every fight that almost has ever happened is because of the lack of communication. And you thought you were communicating well. You know how many cues in like regular, like now that I look at, sit back to your heels, drive your knees out, do that. And I'm just like, horrible kill, horrible cue, horrible cue. And sure, like for 40 people, it's as good as it gets. But why is it that every one of those classes, people have knee injuries, ankle injuries, they're having like plantar fasciitis, they now have a shoulder, they have frozen shoulder, and it's like all these things are happening, and it's like because you don't know how to use that area of your body. The brain doesn't understand how to move that, which is AKA mobility. So if you don't, which is strength. People think mobility isn't strength. Mobility is strength, and it's crazy to think any other ways, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, you're speaking my language because I am like a cue Nazi. Like I've like created and sold courses just on giving people better scripts and cues
100%.
that cause more awareness
Sure.
as opposed to misunderstanding and body morphology. So you're totally speaking my language. And I wonder if that, well, I mean, I know, but I want to hear what you have to say on the idea that we said at the beginning, which was like, if you're actually engaging properly and using those chains, whether an instructor is cueing you well or not, but learning that engagement in your body, then is that maybe the answer why we can be more efficient and we can do less? Like we don't have to be grinding on that one machine just for like the vastus lateralis, 100 times a day. But if you actually are like what you described, if you guys are listening to the audio and not watching this on the YouTube, he's showing us a lot of cool. You might want to tag into our YouTube if you've never been on YouTube.
That's what everyone tells me I need to do a YouTube channel, and I just haven't.
He's showing us a lot of body movements he's not describing. If anything's lost in translation, go watch the video. But it's like he's like walking you up with his hand, different parts of the body. So I guess I just wanted to expand on like the usage of more parts of your body in every movement. It will burn more calories, right? And will bring more, not only awareness and safety, but like in that movement and body awareness, I feel like there's a lot of dominoes I see coming with that as far as like the results you do want. Instead of just cranking in one anatomical motion. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I don't know if being better at it burns more calories. I haven't done studies on that. And again, even I think so many studies are watered down because it's almost impossible to get a perfect control. So I would never go out and make that claim. But so many people that do this feel way better. That's what I know is like, and it's funny, like for those that aren't watching, it's crazy how literally I use sight, I use touch, I use my ears to, again, I try to assess everything when I'm working with someone because, dude, use your 5 senses. Outside of taste, like that's probably the one I don't use. Again, I'm trying to like really hone in on what people are doing. But so much of it, slow it down and then understanding your percentages. So I think if you're getting injured and you're getting injured frequently, it's because you don't understand your percentages. You're maybe going 90%, 95%, or again, that muscle's not strong enough. You need to squeeze less. You need to start at 50%, stay there with the occasional 90, 100s, or you could be the other end of the spectrum where people don't know how to squeeze enough. And so that's why I always talked about the squeeze and the handshake. Like I like literally started focusing on my fingers. Like you can grip them tight this way or you can go here. I've almost used this as more of a neutral just to find what my fingers are doing. Like if I want to do wrist cards, it's funny because if I go and I rotate from like, I always say flexion, extension, rotation, there's parts where those fingers want to come off. So as I rotate, it almost like they'll disconnect, and then in different positions, that'll show me where someone who's trying to rotate the shoulder actually rotates the elbow instead of the shoulder, and so they lose shoulder rotation because they've maxed out internal or pronation of the elbow, so the shoulder can't move anymore.
Okay, so this was one thing I wrote down. What he just said quickly was CARS, and that stands for Controlled Articulated Rotation.
So it comes from the FRA, Functional Range, Assessment of Functional Range Control is the name of the series, and that's really what I met a kid named Matt Penny that was a trainer at a gym a while ago, and he's the one that kind of let me onto this. And then I worked with Tyler Tom Woolley, who was a trainer, and Eric that they were a couple PTs that have really helped me expound and understand that, like, again, a lot of the lifting we do is just, like, we focus too much on muscles and not enough on joints.
So do you think cars are, like, the best thing pre-movement and training or post?
It depends on the person.
Okay, so tell us about
At the beginning, learning how to do it, yes. I would say it's so hard because I don't know, I've done this so long that I change my processes with the person.
Cool.
Like, it's so weird how, like, when I move with somebody, like, it's just what I feel like is the best for them, because I feel like I try to sit, I try to think, I know their injuries, I know what they've gone through, and I try. So I've actually loved using them in the middle of movements for a lot of my clients.
Wow.
So, like, say I'll do some adduction, and then I'll make them do some hip cars, intellectual rotation.
Wow.
So again, think of it this way. The thing that I've loved about learning about the joints is the shoulder, again, it adducts, it flexes, it intellectually rotates, it abducts, and then it extends. It does one of 6 things. The hip does the same. Again, they have different functions, but they do one of those 6 things. And so then once you start learning patterning, I mean, so much of it's circular, and I love the circle. And then again, it's on a diamond. So I teach a lot in northeast, southwest, like north, south.
Okay.
But don't skip your northeast, east, southeast, south. Because how many people go northeast, southwest? That's a diamond.
Yeah.
Not a circle.
I love that.
And so I'm using a lot of that kind of stuff to cue. So every time I look at something, people look at it as what they lack. I look at it as where you can get better. And this could be, again, I don't know if it's causing injury, but it could be what's causing a lot of these injuries.
Right.
And if I get better at some of these things, I know very few people that you don't start to feel better. Like, start your morning. So again, what they think is like, do your morning cars every damn day. It's like part of your morning routine. Like, again, I don't care what else is your morning routine. Like, mine literally is, I wake up, like I told you, I study like scriptures for 10 minutes, trying to find just one thing that I can apply to today's life, because a lot of this stuff, like, and I don't care what your scripture is or what you want to study, but find something that's applicable today. Like, you can be reading C.S. Lewis. Me and my buddies were talking about it, C.S. Lewis. And it's crazy how you can tell, like, again, he speaks an olden language, but again, there's so much stuff that you can really extract and make applicable today, and then you can apply it, which is amazing. And then try it. Then try to use it, and it's weird once you start to do that, and I do it almost every morning, and it's like, whoa, and it's almost like every morning's it is a new day, but it's a new day to try something, to see.
Yeah, and I think, I love what you said, because I also think it's really important when you stress the difference between mobility and flexibility, again, because the thing that does, mobility is, let me think and see if we can get
You can think about it, and then I'll tell you the easiest way to explain it.
Okay.
And the easiest way to go over your clients.
Like, how I would say it is, flexibility is your, like, range of motion that you can measure, and mobility is like your ability for muscular control and awareness.
Yes, 100%. But God, you said that so much like a doctor. So most of these people are like, what did she just say?
Exactly. So give us a simple way.
Flexibility is where I can move you. Mobility is, can you move there? Without a compensation pattern from somewhere else.
I love that.
Super easy. So you know how many kids I bring in, and I'm like, they do this. And again, hip flexion, how much it comes from abdominal and spinal flexion. Again, that's why people's psoases are tight. They feel a lot of tightness, is because they pull from the spine. Most of us that do, again, what I find with especially females in Pilates and yoga, they are spine specialists. Their spine does everything. The problem is it's not supposed to do everything. Just like you and your marriage, you're not supposed to do everything, right? Well, most of it.
I know.
But it's fine. I'm telling you, athletes, my most athletic kids overuse their spine, and then guess what? Surprise, surprise, they have back issues, then it bleeds somewhere else, and then something ends up happening, and then most of them don't ever play. But again, the spine has a role, and it's not everything.
Yeah, I was going to say, here come your good quotes. Always is not the answer.
Always is not the answer, but never is not the right answer either. Very rarely. There's, again, I have black, white, lots of gray. Find the gray.
What you're saying and the range what you work in, I think it's just so important, because there is and has been a lot of training out there around stabilization of the spine and the pelvis, but not in the way that gives us the maximum capacity or efficacy or health. And I think that's one of the things I just wanted to also ask you to mention was, you have that saying prehab versus rehab. And do we think about it that way? I think it would be really awesome if more of us could buy into the prehab.
Well, you got to think of it as, what are you doing? Like, why are you in the gym? If you have high blood pressure and you have high blood pressure,
yeah,
or you're pre-diabetic, like, and you need to lose weight, learn how to control your eating. Again, whether it's you need, and again, there's so many levels to it.
right.
Whether it's a nutritionist, but it might be a nutritionist. But again, there's going to be triggers there as well. So there's an emotional side of it as well. And then there's a movement side of it as well too. So again, for most people that are like, they want to go to this like gym and they're like 50 pounds overweight, like, get the weight off. The easiest way to do it is find out what you get a weekly body fat scan or an in-body scan, and then start doing light cardio. The stair stepper is the key. Like, again, I used to hate it because in CrossFit, I'm like, bodybuilders, that's what they do. It's low impact. It's easy to keep your heart rate at 140. There's a lot of movement. Sure, there are a few other things that might be a little better, but again, for most people, it's easy. It's low impact. It's not high impact. The body doesn't like extra weight on those joints. I don't know how else to spell it. It just is what it is. Most of the time it doesn't, because very few people are able to distribute it the way they need to keep those joints like safe and sound.
Yeah.
And so then get your protein up and then learn how to eat in a caloric deficit.
Yeah.
Again, if you're not losing, usually it's because you're not in a caloric deficit. The more I study, the more I do this, the more I work with people, like, it's just crazy how many people don't understand what that means. Like, if you burn 2,000 calories and you eat 2,000 calories or 1,900 calories and the next day you eat 20, like, you're not in a caloric deficit. A caloric deficit is something that happens consistently over time as well. Like, it has to be consistently, and that's why these short diet fads, like, someone will do a fast diet, so they're in a caloric deficit, they lose weight, but then you know what they miss? The maintenance. The maintenance is the most important aspect. You know why? Because what is life? Life is mostly maintenance, in my opinion. There are times for extreme growth, but for most of us, it's the maintenance. The problem is that my maintenance is in a calorie surplus. Shoot, 10 pounds last year, 17 pounds total, 30 pounds. Then you're 5 years removed and you're looking back and you feel pretty crappy about yourself and you're in a really bad place.
So what does your maintenance look like right now?
That I've done something in and around a gym, of lifting to moving to whatever.
Yeah.
And then before that, I've been doing push-ups since I was a little kid. I was active wrestling with my dad, and then starting baseball at 5 and basketball and like t-ball. So again, to look at me, like, I'm a bad example because I haven't stopped moving for 32 years.
So at that point, your maintenance is
very little,
right? So people would look at you, but I want to make this point because people sometimes also look at me and say, oh, you're so good at yoga, you must do it all the time, blah, blah, blah. But I've reached a point in my life where I'm actually practicing twice a week right now.
Awesome.
And I think it's an interesting point to make where Doug has kind of showed you the caloric deficit, the like maintenance and like your trajectory and like what you're training for is important to me, and maybe it would resonate with other people, which is that attitude of drive, go, kill yourself is adding to the detriment of a lot of these things. And so if you do have your why, and you like you said, maybe there's extreme growth or weight loss or something to get you to that point.
Sure.
But I think what you should start understanding is the goal isn't, I'm going to add this full-time job into my schedule so that I can be healthy or be this or be whatever it is you want to be, is not going to take 8 hours of your day for the rest of your life, right?
Sure.
I want to make this point of like ease and efficacy and like self-alignment and awareness could be just that. And I've heard you say 100%. That so many times.
Timing,
like,
right? We even talked about it, timing's everything. It's crazy.
Yes.
Like, timing is literally everything. And so most people, when I sit them down, because what I really like to do is go through their schedule. What time do you wake up? What time do you go to bed? What's your nighttime routine? What's your morning routine? What time do you eat at? What time? Because most people are like, I don't have enough time. And I'm like, well, let's find. Again, if you really don't have time, I'll find it in your schedule.
Yeah, and I've heard you say that, like, you're not training to, like, kill them. Like, you make it so doable and manageable and achievable, and it's usually not what they think it is.
I want you to feel better after you left. I want you to feel better. Like, very rarely does someone leave saying, I feel worse. If they did, then I don't feel like I did my job right.
Yeah, and the thing about not being sore, like you said that to me in a conversation
4 to
too.
6.
If you're sore for like all week and can't do what you want to do.
It's a problem. Too much.
Yeah.
That's a big tell that you're doing way too much. Like, it's just most people are like, well, I used to be able to, but then that used to really matters because like someone that's in the gym, like, and that's constantly in, I can progress a lot faster. The problem is a lot of these people, or a lot of us, or whoever's out there, are at kindergarten levels, and we're trying to enter into the 12th grade level. It's literally like you're trying to learn, like say you're trying to learn Japanese, and like they now are going over like sayings and like, no, you got to start with simple grammar, simple verbs, conjugations, where to put them at the beginning or the end. Like that's where you have to, again, if I start you here, like how much longer is it going to take you to learn? So the problem is everyone wants to start with like this specialty where it's like you got to start with the basics.
Yeah, you want to change your life and you go join a CrossFit gym. Now you're pumping it 6 days a week. It's not even what's required, I think.
It works for some people and it doesn't work for some people. So, and I love CrossFit. I did it for a lot of years. I was a CrossFit Games athlete with Salt Lake City CrossFit, and I love it. And again, it's a niche. There's a time and place, but
I actually still love it. Like if I can pop
well,
in
then
a
do
CrossFit
it.
class,
That's great.
I
don't like. I don't want to do another snatch every. And it's funny how much when I was in it, how much I loved clean and jerks and snatch, and now I'm like, nah, let's do some handstand walks.
Someone asked me to do one
I love the body weight. For me, so much of it's
Yeah.
How much I can internally activate. It's the same thing when we were talking about emotional resilience and everything. It's like, it's internal, not external. Because so much of it's like externally move that way, externally deadlift that. Then, and so there is a place for it. There's a huge place for it still. But like, again, I just see so many people, like, I know I grew up in the time we grew up in high schools. High school's the worst. Like, I can't stand kids that lived in high school without a coach or a trainer. Like, the high school coach is not, and let me repeat, he is not qualified to do that. And if your kid's coming home saying his back hurts from it, I'm sorry, go find a trainer. Like, there's a reason why we work our butts off for this, not to downplay what the coach is doing, but the coach coaches sports. That's what he's good at. He's not good at those movement patterns. That's not what he's supposed to do. So that's what drives me crazy is I'll walk in and I'll be like, you're hurting these kids. Yeah. Like, the way they're deadlifting and trying to say, how much can you max deadlift? 5x5? Like, dude, like, do you even, like,
what's the majority of your clients right now? I know you enjoy working with
so broad.
Everyone, but is it that huge range? Because I know you've got those athletes.
Sure. So I got 14 to 18. So I bet middle-aged women are 50% of my clients.
Really?
Yeah. I love it, and they're some of my faves. Like, it's funny how each group is my favorite it's like a kid, right? Pick your favorite kid.
I know.
I don't have a favorite kid. I love them all for their own individuality and the different laughs and the different sides of me that they bring out. Cool. So it's fun. So yeah, I have like a bunch of women that I've helped, but then I have some dads that I help and I love. I usually don't train very young, but I have a couple that are around 11, 12 that I feel like they're my darn kids anymore now because of like the ability to work with them. But
I'm just seeing such important, now that I've got like 3, athletes in my house now, I'm like, my whole mind is being expanded to like how important it is at that age to get on some of these ideas.
Yes and no. So it all depends, because again, that's where as parents we can almost feel like we're missing out. As long as your kids are active, not complaining about injuries and hurt, like I don't think they really need to do
But
need to do some single leg skipping.
If they're up leveling in sports and sustaining injuries,
if you train like a professional, like a professional athlete, you better have somebody else helping you. Like some of these 14-year-old kids that are playing indoor soccer in the winter, they're playing on turf, and they're traveling year round. A lot of these kids are doing more than professional athletes. Which is crazy, which is pretty crazy. Like, again, they never get a break. And then when I look at it like as an outstander, I'm just like, it's a no-brainer. It's like, but as parents are so afraid that their kids are gonna get left out, and I get it. It's a big thing, but it's, I don't know. It's one of those. It's a hard thing to tackle. And for me, like, people ask me about my kid, I'm like, I'm not getting him anything until he tells me he wants to. Like, he's 6 and he wants to run and jump, and we play catch, we shoot hoops, we run, jump, flip, roll, wrestle. Like, we do all of it right now. And I'm not going to say, why does he need competitive sports? The kid's more competitive than I am. Like, he doesn't need competitive sports. But again, when he's 12, 13, 14, he wants to start proving something. Let's get after it. Let's get to work. I'm here for it.
And I think it's just I think all this information, and thank you so much, like, is also just like something in here, if not many things, are going to start triggering a different way for like the listeners to be thinking about things too, and like pull out the things that resonates, because I think they're all really important and fun and cool ideas as they evolve through this with their body.
They do now. I'm telling you, kids are so good now because of it. Like, Maddox will be like, Dad, let me see it. And he watches it and they use it as feedback instead of as pain. Right. So we use it because of it's perspective, right? Kids are like, that's so cool. And I'm like, no, not because Maddox started to be like, Dad, erase that. And I'm like, no, come watch it and then tell me what you did wrong. So I'll come watch it and I'll be like, okay, I don't rotate there. And then guess what? He doesn't do it again.
I didn't even think about
Dude,
it
that's why kids, like, it's crazy. Like, I can show these kids and now I'm like, watch this, see this, I don't like this, I want this. And then the next one, boom, they do it. And it's just like, well, of course, again, this is where technology is so cool. And this is where we are failing as a society. We have the best things at our hands, fingertips, like at all times. But most people, we are not executing. Like, just because you have it it's not going to do it themselves. Yeah. And so there's so many tools, there's so many people out there. And I always say, finance for sure, number one. That's always a finance. That's what I always have clients say. I'm like, is finance an issue with them? Well, because one-on-ones get expensive. I get it. Yeah. So then this is your best option to do it this way or to do that way. So start here and then maybe come to me once you have an idea. If you don't want me to teach you the basics, go learn it online.
I love that.
Right? Because
well, I'm glad you mentioned tools.
Because it's hard. I get it.
Yeah, and at the same time, the people who need you will find a way. And
sure.
But just work in the niche you feel called to. That evolves. Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit different because I know you're the sole provider of your situation and I'm not. Sure. But I think the principles apply, and I think you're doing a good job at it. I do. Okay, and so you can answer this as much or as little as you want, but this is my nerdy hobby, and I just love everything you do, and that's why I've always been in the fitness world. And I want to pull you this way a little bit because I know that you have all these skills as well, and we connect on these levels. But the emotional side and the self-care and the tools that it takes to even get yourself to a place where you can care for yourself at that level and talk about your physicality and the whole what's it called, pizza pie of every category of your life. We talk about how this physical aspect is everything, right? Or it mirrors everything, it bleeds into everything. And I wonder if you'd be willing to share a little bit about when things got hard last year and how did you pull yourself out? What tools, what physical, anything you want to share about. I feel like that's just, it's real, it's personable, it's encouraging, it's authentic, it's what we're all going through. And I know that you have a lot to offer there, which is really cool and encouraging.
Well, thank you. I have an awesome network. Let me start with that. The people I know and the people I've come to grow, to love and be a part of. I have an amazing network. And I think a lot of us have better networks than we think. We just don't know how to use them correctly sometimes. And so for me, I just started going back and just kind of just talking to people and then just getting ideas. Because I can't tell you how many people are going through the same stuff where their marriages, they're feeling like they're at shambles at work, they're stressed, they're waking up at 5:30, 6:30 a.m., rolling out of bed, gosh, another day to get the kids ready, and then this and that. And then instead of looking at it as an opportunity, we're looking at it as a burden. And again, if you start looking at it that way, it's crazy how things can spiral pretty quickly. But for me, it was just getting back to the basics again, right? So one of my really good clients and good friends of mine, he talked to me about these 4 pillars that he learned. He went off to this camp kind of in Texas and these 4 pillars, and I've kind of adopted it, and I really, really, really like. Because again, I think we have 7 pillars, 8 pillars. It's just too much. It gets to be too much for most people. Again, you're not teaching a 1st grade or 12th grade curriculum unless they're ready for it. And so for me, it's faith, family, fitness, and finance. So those 4 things really resonated, and then within I kind of went through and picked things that I could work on because, again, each one of them felt slightly out of balance, and normally not all 4 are out of balance for me. So that's where I felt like all 4 were off, and it was like, oh shit. My walls are caving in a little bit. Jesus, my wife loved me. Is my business gonna work out? What do I believe in? Who do I believe in? Is there what do I believe? And then fitness was even struggling a little bit for me, which is crazy. I never had an issue with that. And it was just kind of it had not necessarily gone to the wayside. Because again, for those of you, at the very beginning when she said, don't work out every day, I move every day. So whether or not you want to consider that working out or not, don't kill yourself every day, I think is a better way to kind of put it. Again, everyone goes to the gym and it's I only know Orange Theory because I trained there for so many years. But again, so many people are so concerned. What they were trying to get is really good, but so many of these things more splat points, more orange, more people think more is better. More is not better in all circumstances. Always is not better. Yes is not always better. No is not always better. So it's learning what your body better, learning your percentages better. And for me, like, yeah, I was on like 5%. And can't tell you the last time I was at 5%. So again, I just went back to the basics and I just started doing the little things. And you know what changed was my morning routine. It's crazy how like adding just a couple things in the morning, like, dude, it was crazy.
So you
like crazy. Like the morning to me is sacred. It is sacred. Like it is crazy.
And you
like,
hadn't been doing that before?
No, I was waking up and rushing off to work, and because again, I get up early. I would start a lot at 6 or 7 a.m. and like. And it's so like for me it's like I had to create a better schedule and then start setting some boundaries, right? Like I know because of that, like, and then I needed to set boundaries with my wife. I needed to set boundaries with my work. I needed to set boundaries with my religion and my spirituality, and then I needed to set boundaries with our finance. And it's funny as like, because we talked about making the boxes, as I did that, it was crazy. Like I said, just 8 weeks ago, if you would have talked to me, I wouldn't have probably even talked to you. Like I was in a lot weirder place, which is crazy because most people would look at me and say like, yeah, that's you. Have you ever been there?
Yeah, you're killing it.
And like the anxiety thing, like it started on like I kind of understood my wife a little bit more. Like I was like, oh shoot, I'm sorry you feel that way. Like, geez, because for me it was always like I never felt that. I didn't feel that scared anxiety like. I'm Doug Springer, like I do what I want when I want, except for then I was like, dude, it was crazy how it made me a little bit more submissive, and then just kind of take a look back and be like, dude, you're so close, but you're missing out just a little in each one of these spots. And that's what I think people don't realize. A lot of times sometimes it is a big thing. Some people, they come in and I'm like, damn, we got some work to do. But you know what? Like, that's why when someone asks like how many sessions it's going to take, I don't know. I wish I could give you an answer. How many sessions do you want it to take? And some people, again, you don't get to control that because it takes time to change. Little by little, here a little. Like, again, my motto is, again, the whole HTK is, again, I don't like saying it out loud what it is because it gets a bad rep or a bad tag for it. But for me, it's like, what are you doing every day to make yourself harder to kill? So HTK to me is like, again, what are you doing to be better? 1% better every day. Like, I wear this pendant as a wolf because it's like my family's my wolf pack. Like we're a pack. Like we're an alpha. I have HTK etched on the back, so I always remember it.
Yeah,
but like, and to me, yeah, and then that's what I built with my kids, right? Like they know like who are we? We're the wolf pack. What do? We fight together. What's our goal? 1% better every day and help others. Like, cause that's what it's about.
I don't think you're over dramatizing it because what is going on in the world today and the things we're up against mentally, emotionally, and probably physically, actually, it's not over dramatization. It is almost like, in my opinion, it's necessary at this point. This is necessary. If you're not working on yourself, I saw one of my favorite trauma research people I like to follow say, we would like to think that our coaches and our mental health professionals and like this type of thing in your life is just optional, but we're living in a world right now where the point is that's necessary. Actually, at this point, keeping your body healthy, having some sort of purpose. Like if that had happened to you and you hadn't had the 20-year history or your entire life history,
I could have fallen
with the tools. Like that's kind of why thank you for sharing and being vulnerable, because that is so relatable and common and happens so often, even to me, that it's kind of like, if we don't have that pattern or you didn't have the wherewithal to say, I know this, right? I know there's a way to pull me out. Like, I know there's something I can apply or create, and have that sort of resiliency and faith in yourself. Harder to kill. Yeah, I agree with that. Physically, emotionally, and mentally, that's kind of how the world is set up. So we could be fighting for our lives here. And so, going back to that morning routine is beautiful for you to share with us. I think that's important. Well,
and mine's short. That's the funny thing. I literally wake up. The first thing I do now, I have wood stairs. I grip my toes around it. I walk it out and I ground it for a minute 30 till my feet feel good. And it's crazy how like my toes, like I turf-toed my big toe and broke my pinky toe like years ago, and I never rehabbed them the way I should have. In the last 2 to 3 years, I've really spent time doing it, and it's the dexterity that's come back, some of the pain that's gone away, just from doing some little toe things. Again, that's where I go back to, dude, it sounds sexy, but it's crazy how it's your foundation. So I start with that. It's funny, I go make coffee, we have a nice little espresso machine, and I'll go get like a shot of espresso, and then I'm out. And then in the car, I do a little bit of study in the brain, like just to get going. And then again, like we were talking about, I find like something that really resonates with me. Once I find what resonates, I don't keep going. I stop and I use that. I write it down and then I mull on it. Like, again, that's, again, pondering, thinking, getting better. Too many times we just keep, like, we think we need to read more. You don't need to read more.
Less is more. Intentional.
Intentional
Is everything.
Well, intense is everything. That's why, again, even when we exercise, I'd always start off with 50% first to get the intent down. Well, because again, you gotta be able to have the intent. Whereas if you squeeze too hard, it muddles the intent. Again, there's a lot of the noise. So that's, I guess, in today's world, there's so much noise. That's what I always tell my athletes. There's so much noise. The ones that can turn the noise off are the ones that make it the furthest and do the best. Because there's so much noise.
Oh, I love that message. Before we end, I don't know, maybe that's your message. You said that earlier in the kitchen, and I was like, my ears perked up, and I was like, that's a magical phone.
Just, you can't like the phones are, dude, they're a nightmare. There's so much power in them. But again, when you give too much power to someone that's not ready for it, it causes disaster and chaos.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've seen that as your
kids. I was like,
my
brain was like going, I know that in my soul. If there was like any advice or any part of your soul you feel left unsaid or you want to share to help people just understand that they have the capacity within them, or anything you feel like you want to share before we end? Any cool quotes?
Any cool quotes off the top
your
of my head?
Yeah.
I know there's so many, but nah, I think that's probably it. Keep it simple. Like, again, I guess that's what I was even told. Good. We'll end it with that one. KISS. Have you ever heard that?
No.
Keep it simple, stupid. to lighten the mood a little bit. But again, we are our own biggest enemies. Sometimes we overthink. And that's what I was doing. And I was like, get to the basics. Keep it simple, stupid. Like, however you want to say. Don't say stupid, because I'm against self-deprecating talk. And I can't keep it simple, smarty. There you go. Let's keep it at that. Keep it simple, stud. That's way better. I like that way better. Keep it simple, stud.
Okay.
There you go, I think is what I would say, because when we start adding, we can really, really, again, add to the noise. You don't want to add to the noise. You want to get rid of it and find that path. And that's what's so hard sometimes.
Yeah. And I'm going to tag to anyone who feels called to like connect with you or work with you or collab with you. I'll tag all that here, but do you want to say like what you've got going on? Do you have a website, email?
No, so just the Instagram is at HTK Movement. So I haven't done a whole lot of advertising because I'm pretty busy already. But if anyone reaches out, I'll always reach out back and with any questions or like kind of like how I do things. Because again, I know I do a lot of things pretty unorthodox. So, but it's seemed to really work with a lot of people I work with, and it's been a lot of fun. I'll tell you what, it's cool to watch. I didn't realize how much fun you could have watching different ages and different types of people progress and get better throughout different times and like parts of their lives. It's pretty cool.
It is super, and it's super cool to be like like a proprietor of that, because when you are helping people with their bodies, you're helping them mentally and you're helping them emotionally. When I first got my first NASM cert, and I trained not to the degree you did, but I trained for 4 or 5 years. There were some people.
Don't discredit what you were doing.
They used to, thank you. They used to say to us, there's a couple reasons why people will hire you. And only one piece of the pie is for actual physical results. That's actually 25% or less, but they're coming to you for friendship, for witnessing, for motivation, and for accountability. So you're doing all of that. Like, and who you are, I think, draws the people to you, because it's more of a mind, body, soul connection coaching thing you're doing under the venue or umbrella of HTK Movement. And like, I see what you're doing. I know the impact. You've told me some of the stories that have happened with your clients, and fun. I feel like it's just you're a good person, a good heart, good coaching. And I'm like so grateful you came on here. That was so fun.
That was fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Connect with me on Instagram at Crystal Zen Yoga. Subscribe on my website at crystalzenyoga.com to receive tools and practices for your holistic journey, and to be the first to know about offerings, workshops, trainings, and retreats. We live in powerful times that require courage, bravery, compassion, authenticity, community, and grounding. You're not alone. Check out my free content, classes, and meditations on YouTube under Crystal Zen Yoga, and have a beautiful day. Sat Nam.